Hello, Media and Society class. I wanted to give you this little introduction to Neil Postman. I think you're really going to enjoy Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death. It's another one of these classic books in media studies. So, throughout Amusing Ourselves to Death, Postman criticizes television effect on American society. And so we're going to read a chapter devoted to television's terrible effect on news and its terrible effect on politics. And you're going to see the influence right away of Marshall McLuhan on Postman. That's going to set you apart from a lot of readers. A lot of people don't read McLuhan, and now you have right before Postman. And remember, Postman was a follower of McLuhan's, even studied with him at times. But rather than the large view of media that McLuhan had, in Postman's book, he focused only on television. So Postman used McLuhan to argue that the very medium of television was great for entertainment, but terrible for news and terrible for politics. And remember, McLuhan was really interested not so much in the content. He wouldn't have cared so much about the TV shows and the television news and things like that. He was interested in the fact that television itself was already shaping those things. And same with Postman. On the small screen, content has to be small, it has to be dramatic and fast and close-up and cut and choppy, always moving. That's television. And so Postman feels this is terrible for news, terrible for politics. But then he goes further and he looks into what this means for America and other societies. And he uses two great books of the 20th century, George Orwell's 1984 and Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. And that part's a little complicated, takes a little background on the book, so I wanted to make sure I gave you that background so you'd really get the most out of the book. Right? So you may have read those two books in high school. And if so, you'll remember both of them offer this kind of dark, scary, but very different portraits of this world to come. So Orwell's 1984 is this totalitarian world. He published it in 1949. Big Brother is always watching. There's mass surveillance. There's repression. You step out of line, you'll be taken away. And it's those authoritarian societies that Orwell was worried about. Huxley's Brave New World was actually published before that, in 1932. And it offers a very different view of the future. He also said people would be completely under control, but not because of force or surveillance or repression. They'd be given drugs to keep them happy. They'd be satisfied with distractions like feelies. They'd be given mindless entertainment. They'd be given non-stop information so they wouldn't want to be informed. They'd be told everything was fine with their world. They needed to do nothing. So Postman looks at our society and the influence of television, and he finds always that Huxley's views are much closer to our lives than Orwell's totalitarian state. He didn't fear that we were going to be repressed and taken over. He feared we were just going to be satisfied, distracted, and do nothing. And that's the title of his book, right? We're amusing ourselves to death. So these last lines are so good, I'm going to read them to you, and then I'll close here. So this is Postman writing. And he says, "What Orwell feared were those who would ban books. What Huxley feared was there would be no reason to ban a book, for no one would want to read one. Orwell feared those who would deprive us of information. Huxley feared those who would give us so much information that we'd be reduced to passivity and egoism. Orwell feared that the truth would be concealed from us. Huxley feared the truth would be drowned out in a sea of irrelevance. Orwell feared we would become a captive culture. Huxley feared we'd become a trivial culture, preoccupied with trivial things." So I hope this gives you a good introduction to Neil Postman. I think you'll really get a lot from the work. It'll add a lot to your thinking about media and politics, and particularly with the election coming up.